All right, guys, welcome back to the show. We got a lot to get into today, so here's a quick look at what's coming up.
Capacity, you recommended that the President of the United States, Joe Biden, grant clemency to all 40 federal death row inmates, all of them, clear them out, correct?
Sir, I'm not going to comment on the recommendations that I made.
Are you proud of that?
Sir, what I am proud of is the fact that I took my job as pardon attorney extremely serious.
I don't think so, Ms. Oyer. I think your judgment is astoundingly terrible. Ms. Oyer, if I could just turn to you. You were President Biden's pardon attorney, is that correct?
I was the Justice Department's pardon attorney.
You made clemency recommendations to the White House whether or not to pardon inmates, is that correct?
My job was to make clemency recommendations.
And in that capacity, you recommended that the President of the United States, Joe Biden, grant clemency to all 40 federal death row inmates, all of them, clear them out, correct?
Sir, as I told Chairman Grassley, I'm not free to discuss the recommendations.
Well, that's what your memo says.
President.
I mean, we have your memo. Your memo of November 4th, 2024 says, and I quote, disparity and undue severity of sentence, which are present in many, if not all of these cases, have been recognized as grounds for clemency. And you went on to recommend in that memo and a series of other memos that are now recorded and public record that the President of the United States grant clemency to murderers, rapists, and the most horrible offenders, all of them, clear death row completely out. I'm amazed you've been called here today. I'm absolutely amazed by it.
Yeah, well, I'm amazed she got called up here too, guys. You gotta love how she points out that she's not free to discuss her own opinion. She wrote her own opinions down in a memo. Senator Hawley got access to the memo, and now she acts like can't even talk about it. Then she wants us to believe that these sentences were too severe and that the death penalty itself was excessively harsh. Like, who gets to decide that? Does she get to decide that? But can you imagine being the family of one of these victims? You already had to sit through the trial and relive every horrific detail of how your loved one was murdered. The scumbag criminal gets found guilty by a jury of his own peers, and then he gets sentenced to death. You leave the courtroom, justice has been served. And now, a few years later, you get a letter from the White House telling that this is what they tell you. After further review, we have decided to remove the killer who took your family member's life off death row. And instead, they will live the rest of their lives locked up in prison. So I got to ask you guys, is this what compassion looks like? Because what it sounds like to me is the criminal, the person who committed the horrific crime, is being shown more compassion than the victims and their own families. It's absolutely insanity. Now, let's watch as Senator Hawley points out some of the criminals she recommended for clemency.
But let's just talk about the people who you recommended. You talk about honoring victims. The people who you recommended get clemency and live at the expense and sufferance of taxpayers for the rest of their lives. Let's start with Dylann Roof. Dylann was a neo-Nazi who murdered 9 African-American worshipers at a Bible study in Charleston, South Carolina, 2015. Do you remember this case?
I do remember it very well.
I would hope you did. Here's his victims. Do you want to look at them? There they are. 9 of them at a Bible study in a church, killed in cold blood. The DOJ knew from day one that he had decided, I'm going to quote from the prosecutors, decided to attack African Americans because of their race. He further decided to attack African American worshipers in a black church in order to make his attack more notorious. More notorious. And yet you recommended that he be granted clemency, live at the expense of taxpayers for the rest of his life, substitute your judgment for that of the American judicial system. Do you stand by that recommendation today?
Sir, I'm not going to comment on the recommendations that I made, but I can tell you that Mr. Roof is going to die in prison as...
He's going to live in prison for a very long time because of you.
Yeah.
Because of your recommendations. And here's what you said in your memo of October 30th, 2024. You said that actually Roof is not a compelling candidate for clemency, but you recommended it anyway. Why? Because he suffered from anxiety, you said. Right? He suffered from anxiety. Did it ever occur to you that maybe the family of his victims might suffer a little bit of anxiety because he marched into their church and murdered them in cold blood because he was an incredible racist and he wanted to get on TV?
Sir.
Do you regret it?
I'm not going to comment on the recommendations
Do you regret it?
that I made to the...
No, she doesn't regret it. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Dylan Roof walked into a church during a Bible study and murdered 9 innocent people because of the color of their skin. She does not regret her decision. Her own memo admitted that he was not a compelling candidate for clemency, but somehow she still recommended clemency for this douchebag. And it's so funny how she points out his anxiety. He had anxiety and his mental health issues. Are you kidding me, guys? What about the anxiety for those families, right? What about the victims and their families who will have to live with this the rest of their life? What about the fear, the pain, and the trauma caused by this guy for what he did? You know, this is exactly what happens when all of your empathy, right? When all of your empathy goes towards the criminal. The criminal, they get excuses for what they did. They get an explanation. And then they get compassion. Oh, they're misunderstood. Meanwhile, the victim and their families, well, they become an afterthought. You never hear the Democratic Party talk about the victims unless the victims happen to be criminals, illegal aliens, fraudsters. And notice something else. She doesn't want to talk about why she recommended clemency, but she has no problem making sure the American people, you and me, she has no problem making sure that we know, understand that he will spend the rest of his life in prison. But let me ask you this. What is the point of having a justice system if some compassionate liberal can come along and recommend clemency based on how she personally feels about the punishment? This is what a middle-aged white liberal looks like. A jury heard the evidence against this man. They found him guilty. A judge issued the sentence of death. The victims were forced to relive everything that their loved one went through. But somehow, this man deserves to die in prison and not be put to death, because that is how I feel. I'm using my feelings to make this decision.
Let's talk about Robert Bowers, a man who regularly spewed such vile hatred of Jews. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. He barged into a Pittsburgh synagogue in 2018 and he shot everybody he could find, killing 11 innocent people who were there to worship. A federal jury in Pittsburgh unanimously recommended the death sentence after finding him guilty on 63 counts. Here they are. They're his victims. Take a good look. You recommended clemency for this person who went in and killed these people just because they're Jews. The other guy killed people just because they're black. This guy killed people just because they're Jews. A jury recommended that he be sentenced to death, and you substituted your judgment for theirs, and now he's going to live. Are you proud of that?
Sir, what I am proud of is the fact that I took my job as pardon attorney extremely seriously.
Apparently not seriously enough. You certainly didn't take the victims seriously.
Yeah, Senator Hawley's right. No, you didn't take your job seriously. Can you believe this, guys? Robert Bowers, he walked into a synagogue and murdered 11 innocent people simply because they were Jewish. A jury heard every detail of what this douchebag did. They found him guilty on all charges. We're not talking about 10, 20, 30. No, we're talking about 63 federal charges. And then they unanimously all agreed that he deserved the death penalty. But once again, Miss Elizabeth Oyer, well, she believed that she knew better. She believed that her own personal feelings and idea of compassion should outweigh the jury's decision. And then she tells Senator Hawley that she took her job seriously. Like, really? Do you really think you did? You recommended clemency for a man who walked into a synagogue and slaughtered 11 innocent people. No, you did not take your job seriously. Because if you truly took it seriously, if you took the responsibility that you need to be in this job, wouldn't you also consider the victims? Wouldn't you consider the victims' families? You know, they're the ones that have actually lost their husbands, their wives, parents, and even grandparents to absolute psychopaths like the ones that you are allowing to live. I honestly don't understand why Democrats always seem to have more compassion for the criminals than they do for the victims. If you know why, guys, if you have an idea why this happens, please put it down in the comments below. I want to know. I've always asked myself, why do they have so much more compassion when you're illegal, a fraudster, a criminal? In this final case, if those two cases weren't bad enough, Senator Hawley, he brings up a crime so horrific. I honestly don't understand how anyone could recommend clemency for this killer.
Then there's Jorge Avila Torres, who wasn't just a murderer. He was a serial killer and a rapist.
Sir,
Here is who he assaulted and killed. He sexually assaulted and killed 8-year-old Laura Hobbs and 9-year-old Crystal Tobias in a Chicago suburb in 2005. And then 4 years after that, he committed another murder. He slaughtered a fellow service member, Navy Petty Officer Amanda Snell, in 2009 while she was in her barracks. That's what he did.
My goodness.
And you recommended clemency for this individual, and now he'll live his life at the expense of taxpayers because you substituted your judgment for that of the American judicial system, jury, judges, the whole lot, and yet you're here to tell us that you're somehow a victim? I don't think so, Ms. Oyer. I think your judgment is astoundingly terrible. I'm amazed that this side of the aisle has called you, and I just ask my friends on this side of the aisle, do you agree with this? Is this what you want? Do you want these people to be pardoned and live at the expense of taxpayers for their whole lives? Do you want to excuse the murders of African-American churchgoers? Do you want to excuse the murders of Jews in their synagogues? Do you want to excuse the murders of these children? Because that's what she did.
Yeah, I'm glad that Senator Hawley is calling out the other side of, are they okay with this? But at the end of the day, as someone who voted Democrat for 25 years, the answer is, yeah, they are okay with it. Because it's not about the victim. It's about how Jorge Avila Torres' life was. Did he have a tough life? Was his parents immigrants? Did he have a hard time getting a job? What caused him to become a serial killer? That's more important than the victims of the crime. Like, I honestly don't even know how anyone could listen to what we just listened to and defend her recommendation. This guy, Jorge, he wasn't just a murderer. He was a serial killer and a rapist. Not only that, but children. Come on. He sexually assaulted and murdered 8-year-old Laura Hobbs and then 9-year-old Crystal Tobias. Right? 4 years later, he then murders Navy Petty Officer Amanda Snell while she was inside her own barracks. So these weren't questionable convictions. This wasn't some accident. No, the other side, we don't need to know how his life was like and what caused him to do this. We don't. What we need to know is that the jury heard the evidence, found him guilty, he was sentenced to death, and the justice system did its job. Those are the things that we need to know to understand why these criminals got the death penalty. But somehow, even after all of that, Elizabeth Oyer, well, she still believed that these monsters, especially this one, deserved clemency. I'm gonna say it to you guys. If you believe, right? If you believe in your own heart that all 40 federal death row inmates should receive clemency, then I don't think you should be selected as the Justice Department's pardon attorney. Because that job shouldn't be based on your own personal feelings, how you feel about the situation. Nobody cares. It should be based solely on our justice system, the facts of each case, and the victims whose lives were taken due to these animals. The story is just so infuriating. Like, do you feel it, guys? After watching this, do you feel like, what? I want to know what you think about this video, guys. Do you think that Dylan Roof, should he have been considered for clemency after murdering all those black people? Right? And then what about Robert Bowers, who murdered 11 innocent people inside a synagogue? And finally, the serial killer who murdered 2 little girls and a Navy service member. Should all of these criminals been recommended for clemency? Or do you think Elizabeth Oyer, well, she allowed her personal feelings of compassion, she allowed what she thought was justice to become more important than the crime, the victims, and the criminals? But let me know in the comments below, guys. Let me know how you think about this story. Okay, so if you're one of the very few lucky people who made it all the way to the end, don't forget, hit that like button right there. And you might as well subscribe. I try to put out at least 3 videos per week, each video covering, the biggest political stories, congressional hearings, and the clips that the mainstream media, they hope you don't really see and understand for yourself what's really going on. And with that said, guys, don't forget, America, our country, is worth fighting for. We need to defend this country, and we need to make sure that we save our values. You take care, guys, and I'll see you on the next video.